They say blood is thicker than water, that family will always have your back, that your siblings are supposed to be your closest allies in this world. I believed all of that. Until the day I discovered my older sister didn't just betray me. She systematically dismantled every dream I'd ever had, one calculated lie at a time. And when I finally uncovered the truth, let's just say the courthouse became the stage where karma took her final bow. This is the story of how trust became my biggest mistake and justice became my sweetest victory.
Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you.
My name is Sage Brown, and for most of my 22 years, I thought I had it all figured out. Not in an arrogant way, more like I had a plan, a roadmap. I was going to be the first person in my family to not just attend college, but to actually finish it. To walk across that stage in a cap and gown while my mom ugly cried in the audience and my dad tried to pretend he wasn't tearing up behind his phone camera. Growing up in Clearwater, a small town in central Pennsylvania, where everyone knew everyone else's business, dreams like mine felt both incredibly close and impossibly far away. My parents, Linda and Robert Brown, ran a modest hardware store on Main Street, Brown's Hardware, because my dad wasn't exactly creative with names. They worked 6 days a week, open to close, the kind of bone-deep exhaustion that comes from building something with your own hands. They didn't have much, but what they did have, they tried to split fairly between me and my older sister, Vanessa. Vanessa was 28. 6 years older than me, and for most of my childhood, she was my hero. She was the one who taught me how to ride a bike, how to put on eyeliner without looking like a raccoon, how to talk back to the mean girls at school without getting suspended. She had this confidence that I desperately wanted to emulate, this way of walking into a room like she owned it. But Vanessa's life hadn't exactly gone according to plan. She'd gotten pregnant at 19 with her boyfriend at the time, Marcus, and dropped out of community college to raise their daughter, my niece Riley. Marcus disappeared before Riley's first birthday, leaving Vanessa to figure it out alone. She moved back in with our parents, working a series of retail jobs that barely covered diapers and daycare. I watched her struggle, watched the light in her eyes dim a little more each year, and I promised myself I wouldn't end up the same way. That's where the college fund came in. When I was born, my grandpa, my dad's father, Harold Brown, set up a savings account specifically for my education. Grandpa Harold had been a school teacher for 40 years, and he believed education was the only real ticket out of a small-town life. He contributed to it regularly until he passed away when I was 12. After his death, my parents kept adding to it whenever they could spare anything. $20 here, $50 there. It wasn't much by some standards, but by the time I graduated high school, that account had grown to just over $47,000. $47,000. It might as well have been $1 million to me. I remember the day my dad sat me down at our kitchen table, the one with the wobbly leg we'd been meaning to fix for 3 years, and told me the exact amount. I'd just gotten my acceptance letter to Riverside State University, about 2 hours away, for their nursing program. I'd worked my tail off for that acceptance, volunteering at the local hospital, maintaining a 3.8 GPA, writing and rewriting my application essay until my English teacher probably wanted to strangle me. This should cover most of your tuition for all 4 years, if you're careful, Dad had said, sliding the bank statement across the table. Room and board, you'll need to figure out with loans and maybe a part-time job. But your education, that's secured, Sage. Your grandpa would be so proud. I cried, actually sobbed right there at that wobbly table while my mom rubbed my back and my dad pretended to be very interested in his coffee mug. Vanessa had been there too, sitting across from me with Riley on her lap. She'd smiled and said all the right things about how happy she was for me, how I deserved it, how I was going to do amazing things. I should have seen it then. The way her smile didn't quite reach her eyes, the tightness around her mouth, the way her fingers drummed against the table in this agitated rhythm. But I was too caught up in my own joy, too blinded by the sudden reality that my dreams were actually going to happen. The account was in my name, but because I'd been a minor when it was created, my parents were listed as co-signers with full access. It had never been an issue before. Why would it be? These were my parents, people who'd sacrificed constantly to give both their daughters a better life. I spent that summer before college in a blur of preparation. I went to orientation, met my future roommate, a girl named Aisha from Philadelphia, who seemed way cooler than me, and bought everything on the essential dorm items list. I worked double shifts at the local diner where I'd been waitressing since I was 16, saving every tip for textbooks and expenses. I was living in this beautiful bubble of anticipation. Vanessa seemed different that summer, though. She was around more, constantly dropping by our parents' house, even though she'd moved into a small apartment across town 6 months earlier. She'd always been close with mom and dad, but this was something else. She was always there for dinner, always offering to help dad with paperwork for the store, always volunteering to run errands for mom. "She's probably just going to miss you," mom said when I mentioned it. "You two have always been close. It's natural she'd want to spend more time with you before you leave." And maybe that was part of it. Vanessa and I did spend a lot of time together that summer. We'd take Riley to the community pool, have sister movie nights, drive out to the state park and hike the easy trails while Riley collected interesting rocks. Vanessa asked me a lot about my plans, about the nursing program, about what I wanted to do after graduation. "I'm thinking pediatric nursing," I told her one afternoon while we watched Riley play on the swings. "I love working with kids. Or maybe emergency medicine, something where I can really make a difference, you know?" Vanessa had nodded, staring off into the distance. "Must be nice," she had said quietly, "having a clear path forward, knowing exactly where you're headed." "I could go back to school," I'd offered, "not for the first time. Riley is older now. There are programs." "With what money, Sage?" She'd laughed, but it was bitter. "I can barely keep the lights on. Community college isn't exactly free, and I've got a kid to feed." I felt guilty then, guilty for having what she didn't, guilty for the opportunities that were handed to me. "I'm sorry, Nessa. I wish—" "Don't," she cut me off. "Don't apologize for being the lucky one. I made my choices. You're making yours. That's life." The conversation had left me feeling uneasy, but I'd pushed it aside. Vanessa had always had a tendency toward melodrama, moments of darkness that would pass like summer storms. I figured she was just processing her feelings about me leaving, about the life I was starting that she never got to have. 3 weeks before I was supposed to move into my dorm, I went to the bank to transfer some money from the college fund to my checking account for textbook pre-orders. I handed the teller my ID and account information, expecting the routine transaction I'd done a handful of times before for smaller amounts. She typed into her computer, her expression neutral, professional. Then her fingers stopped. She looked at the screen, frowned, typed something else, looked at me, back at the screen. "Is there a problem?" I asked, that first tiny flutter of anxiety beginning in my stomach. I need to check something. One moment, please." She disappeared into the back office. I stood there at the counter, watching other customers conduct their business, that flutter growing into something more insistent. She returned with the branch manager, an older man named Mr. Peterson who'd known my family for years. "Sage," he said gently, and that gentleness made my blood run cold. "Could you step into my office for a moment?" I followed him on legs that suddenly felt unstable. He closed the door behind us, gestured to a chair. I sat. "There seems to be some confusion about your account," he began carefully. "The college fund account ending in 7734? "Yes, that's my account. I just need to transfer $1,500 for textbooks." Mr. Peterson folded his hands on his desk. "Sage, that account currently has a balance of $237. The words didn't make sense. I literally couldn't process them. It was like he was speaking another language. "That's not possible," I said slowly. "There should be over $47,000 in that account. My dad just checked it 2 months ago." The account had a series of large withdrawals over the past 8 weeks. Mr. Peterson said, turning his computer monitor toward me.
all authorized by one of the co-signers on the account. I stared at the screen, withdrawal after withdrawal. $5,000, $7,000, $3,000. On and on, bleeding the account dry. Who? I whispered, though somewhere deep in my gut I already knew. Which co-signer authorized these? Mr. Peterson's expression was pained. Vanessa Brown. According to our records, she was added as a co-signer to the account 6 months ago. The room tilted. 6 months ago, right around the time she'd moved into her new apartment. That's impossible, I repeated, but my voice sounded hollow even to my own ears. That's my college fund, my grandpa, my parents. That money was for my education. I'm very sorry, Sage, but legally, as a co-signer, she had full authority to make those withdrawals. If you believe there's been some kind of fraud or I didn't hear the rest. I was already standing, already moving toward the door, my mind racing through every interaction I'd had with Vanessa that summer. Her constant presence at our parents' house, her sudden interest in helping with paperwork, the way that she'd been so careful to be the one who checked the mail, who answered the phone. She hadn't been spending time with me because she'd miss me. She had been covering her tracks.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story.
I drove home in a daze, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles went white. My entire body felt numb, like I was operating on autopilot while my brain tried desperately to process what Mr. Peterson had just told me. $47,000? Gone! My entire future evaporated in 8 weeks of systematic theft. Because that's what it was. Theft. No matter how Mr. Peterson had tried to dress it up with words like authorized and co-signer rights, my sister had stolen my college fund, the money my grandfather had set aside for me, the money my parents had scraped together from their modest income, sacrificing their own comfort so I could have opportunities they never had. I pulled into the driveway of my parents' house too fast, the tire screeching slightly on the asphalt. My dad's truck was there. It was Tuesday, the one afternoon a week they closed the hardware store early for inventory. Perfect! I needed them both to hear this. I burst through the front door without knocking. Where is she? My mom looked up from the kitchen table where she'd been going through what looked like invoices for the store. Sage? Honey, what's wrong? You look... Where is Vanessa? My voice came out sharp, harder than I'd ever spoken to my mother. Dad emerged from the hallway, concern creasing his weathered face. Sage, what happened? Did something happen at the bank? You could say that. I threw my purse onto the couch, pulled out my phone, and opened the photo I'd taken of Mr. Peterson's computer screen before I left, the transaction history showing withdrawal after withdrawal. Did either of you authorize Vanessa as a co-signer on my college fund? The confusion on both their faces was genuine. What? Mom stood up, moving toward me. No, of course not. That account is yours. We're the co-signers because we set it up when you were... Apparently, Vanessa added herself 6 months ago, and apparently she's been draining it ever since. It's gone. All of it. There's $237 left. The color drained from my mother's face. My dad took the phone, his hand trembling as he scrolled through the transactions. I watched his expression shift from confusion to disbelief to something that looked like physical pain. This has to be a mistake, Mom whispered. Vanessa wouldn't... She couldn't. She did. My voice cracked. Mr. Peterson showed me everything. Her signature, her ID verification. She's been taking thousands at a time for 2 months. Dad sank into the nearest chair, still staring at my phone like if he looked long enough, the numbers would change. How did she even... We never authorized this. That's when the second realization hit me, and it felt like being punched in the stomach. I said slowly, the paperwork. Remember when Vanessa was helping you with the store paperwork, those nights she stayed late to help organize your files? My father's face went gray. Oh, God. Robert! Mom's voice was small, frightened. There were some documents I signed for the business accounts, bank forms, updating information. She said it was routine maintenance, that she'd taken a bookkeeping course online and wanted to help us modernize our systems. He looked up at me, devastation written across every line of his face. She must have slipped the college fund paperwork in with everything else. I didn't read every single page. She's my daughter. I trusted her. The betrayal of it crashed over me in waves. This wasn't some impulsive decision. This wasn't Vanessa seeing an opportunity and taking it in a moment of desperation. This was planned, calculated. She'd spent months setting this up, manipulating our father, gaining access to an account that represented everything I'd been working toward. I need to call her. Mom was already reaching for her phone, her hands shaking. There has to be an explanation. Maybe she borrowed it for an emergency? Maybe. Mom! I caught her wrist gently but firmly. There's no explanation that makes this okay. She stole $47,000 from me, from my future. And she did it deliberately, over weeks, while pretending to be excited about me going to college. Mom's eyes filled with tears. But she's your sister. She loves you. Does she? The question hung in the air, bitter and sharp. Dad was already on his phone, pulling up the bank's app, verifying what I'd shown them. His face grew harder with each swipe. The withdrawals correspond with her rent payments, her car payment, that new furniture she bought for her apartment. He looked up at us, and I'd never seen him look so old, so defeated. The front door opened. We all froze. Vanessa walked in carrying Riley on her hip, a bag of groceries in her other hand. She was smiling, talking to Riley about something, completely oblivious. Then she saw our faces, saw me standing there with tears of rage streaming down my cheeks, saw Dad's stricken expression, saw Mom's phone clutched in her white-knuckled grip. "What's going on?" she asked carefully, setting Riley down. "Baby, go play in your room for a bit, okay?" Riley, sensing the tension, scurried off without argument. Smart kid. "Really, Nessa?" I found my voice, and it came out cold. "You're really going to stand there and pretend you don't know?" Something flickered across her face. Fear, guilt, defensiveness, I couldn't tell which. "I don't know what you're talking about." "My college fund, the one you've been systematically emptying for the past 2 months. The silence that followed was deafening. Vanessa's face went through a series of expressions. Shock, then anger, then something almost like resignation. "Oh," she said flatly. "Oh?" I stepped toward her. "That's all you have to say? Oh?" "Sage!" She held up her hands like she was trying to calm a wild animal. "I can explain." "Explain?" Dad's voice boomed, making us all jump. I'd never heard him yell like that, not once in my entire life. "Explain how you forged documents, how you tricked me into signing papers adding you to your sister's account, how you stole nearly $50,000 meant for her education." "I didn't steal it," Vanessa's voice rose to his, making us all jump. "I'm family. That money could have been split between both of us, but no. Sage gets everything just because Grandpa Harold liked her better." "That is not what happened," Mom interjected, her voice sharp. "Dad set up that fund specifically for Sage's education. You were already out of high school. He talked about setting something up for Riley's future, too, but then he got sick." "So I get nothing? Riley gets nothing?" Vanessa's face was red now, years of resentment pouring out. "You know how hard it is for me, raising a kid alone, working dead-end jobs, watching everyone else get ahead while I'm stuck treading water? So you decided to sabotage my future to make yours easier?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Nessa, that money was supposed to cover 4 years of nursing school. 4 years. I had a plan. I had a path. What am I supposed to do now?"
Figure it out like the rest of us, she shot back. Take out loans, work full-time, join the real world where not everything is handed to you on a silver platter. Handed to me? I laughed, and it sounded slightly unhinged. I worked my ass off for that acceptance letter. I maintained straight A's. I volunteered hundreds of hours. I saved every tip from the diner.
The only thing handed to me was a college fund that my grandfather set up and my parents contributed to, a fund you had no right to touch. I had every right, Vanessa screamed. I was a co-signer. The bank let me take that money because it was legal. You manipulated Dad into adding you to the account under false pretenses, Mom said, her voice cold in a way I'd never heard before. That's fraud, Vanessa. That's a crime. You're going to have your own daughter arrested? Vanessa's laugh was harsh. Really? You do that to Riley's mother? To your granddaughter's stability? And there it was, the manipulation, the emotional blackmail, using Riley as a shield. Don't you dare bring Riley into this, Dad said, standing up. That little girl deserves better than a mother who steals from her own sister. What example are you setting for her? I'm setting an example of survival, Vanessa's voice cracked, of doing whatever it takes to provide for my child, even when my own family doesn't give a damn about my struggles. We've helped you constantly, Mom said, tears streaming freely now. We paid your first year's rent at the new apartment. We watch Riley whenever you need. We gave you the old truck when yours died. We've been there for you every single step of the way. Scraps, Vanessa spat. You gave me scraps while Sage got a blank check to her dreams. I felt something inside me harden, crystallize into cold determination. Where's the money, Vanessa? She looked away. Gone? All of it? Most of it. Rent, car payments, furniture, Riley's daycare fees, catching up on credit card debt. She rattled off the list like she was reciting a grocery order. You spent my entire future on furniture and credit cards, I said slowly, letting each word land. You looked me in the eye all summer, pretended to be happy for me, took me hiking and to the pool with Riley, all while you were spending the money that was supposed to pay for my education. I'm sorry. The words came out quiet, almost sullen. I am, but I needed it more than you did. Needed it? I needed it to go to college, Nessa, to build a career, to become a nurse, and you took that from me. You'll figure something out, she said, but she wouldn't meet my eyes. You're smart. You always land on your feet. The dismissiveness of it, the casual cruelty, took my breath away. This wasn't my sister standing in front of me. This was a stranger wearing her face, someone who'd calculated the value of my dreams and decided they were worth sacrificing for her convenience. Get out, Dad said quietly. Vanessa's head snapped up. What? Get out of this house, now. Dad, now! His voice shook the windows. Get Riley and get out. You're not welcome here until you make this right. You can't be serious. Vanessa looked between all of us, waiting for someone to back down. You're choosing her over me? You chose yourself over this entire family, Mom said, wiping her eyes. We didn't make this choice, Vanessa. You did. I watched my sister's face contort with rage and something else, maybe panic, at the realization that her actions had consequences. She stormed down the hallway, and I heard her telling Riley to pack her things, voice sharp and irritated. Riley's confused questions, the slam of doors. 10 minutes later, they were gone. The three of us stood in the living room, the silence heavy and suffocating. My entire life had just imploded, and I couldn't even process the magnitude of it yet. What do? I whispered. Classes start in 3 weeks. I already paid the housing deposit with my savings. I already bought my books. We'll figure it out, Mom said, pulling me into her arms. But her voice lacked conviction. They didn't have $47,000. They didn't have $4,000. The hardware store provided a modest living, nothing more. My phone buzzed. A text from Vanessa. You'll regret this. All of you. Not an apology. A threat. That's when I knew this wasn't going to be resolved with family therapy and tearful reconciliations. My sister had declared war, and she'd done it using my future as ammunition. The question was, what was I going to do about it?
I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the transaction history, those numbers bleeding away my future in neat clinical rows. I lay in my childhood bedroom staring at the acceptance letter from Riverside State University that I'd proudly pinned to my bulletin board 3 months ago. It felt like a cruel joke now, a promise that someone had ripped away while I wasn't looking. By 4 a.m., I'd made a decision. I was going to fight back. The next morning, I walked into the Clearwater Police Department at 8 a.m. sharp. The officer at the front desk, a middle-aged woman named Officer Patricia Reeves, who'd given a safety presentation at my high school years ago, looked up with a polite smile that faded when she saw my face. "Sage Brown? Everything all right, honey?" "I need to file a police report," I said, my voice steadier than I felt, "for fraud and theft." Officer Reeves led me to a small interview room. I laid out everything: the college fund, the forged paperwork, the systematic withdrawals, Vanessa's confession. I showed her screenshots, bank statements, text messages. I watched her expression shift from sympathetic to troubled. "This is a family matter," she said carefully after I had finished. "Technically, your sister was a co-signer on the account, which means she fraudulently added herself to the account by tricking my father into signing documents he didn't understand. That's forgery. That's fraud. I understand you're upset. I'm not upset, Officer Reeves. I'm the victim of a crime." I leaned forward. "If a stranger had done this, you'd arrest them immediately. The fact that she's my sister doesn't make it legal." Officer Reeves sighed. "You're right. But cases involving family members are complicated. The district attorney's office is often reluctant to prosecute when it's domestic. And even if they do, the process is lengthy and there's no guarantee of recovery. So I'm just supposed to let her get away with stealing $50,000? I'm not saying that. I'm saying you need to be prepared for this to be difficult." She pulled out a form. "I'll take your report, forward it to the detective division, but I'm being honest with you. This could take months to investigate, and prosecution is far from certain." I filed the report anyway. Officer Reeves gave me a case number that felt meaningless, a string of digits that didn't bring back my college fund or my peace of mind. Walking back to my car, my phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello?" "Miss Brown, this is Jennifer Caldwell from Riverside State University Financial Aid Office. I'm calling about your enrollment status." My stomach dropped. "Yes." "We haven't received your first tuition payment, which was due yesterday. Your registration is currently on hold pending payment. There's been a situation with my funding. A family emergency." The words felt inadequate. "Is there any way to extend the deadline? I'm working on resolving it, but—" "We can give you until the end of next week," Miss Caldwell said, not unkindly. "But after that, if we don't receive payment, we'll have to release your spot to someone on the wait list. We have students eager to take that slot in the nursing program." "I understand. Thank you." I sat in my car in the police station parking lot and did something I'd been avoiding. I looked at my actual options. Student loans would cover some of it, but without the college fund as a base, I'd be looking at over $100,000 in debt by graduation. The interest alone would bury me. I could defer enrollment for a year, work full-time to save money, but the nursing program only accepted students once a year. If I missed this cohort, I'd be waiting until next fall, setting me back an entire year. Or I could give up entirely, get a full-time job in Clearwater, watch my dreams disappear in the rearview mirror like so many others who had never made it out of this town. No, absolutely not. I drove to a small law office on Oak Street, Henderson and Associates. Marcus Henderson had handled some business contracts for my parents' hardware store over the years. His office was modest, sandwiched between a dry cleaner and a tax preparation service. The receptionist, an older woman with kind eyes, looked surprised to see me. "Sage, is your daddy with you?" "No, ma'am. I need to speak with Mr. Henderson about a personal legal matter." 20 minutes later, I was sitting across from Marcus Henderson, a man in his 60s with silver hair and a rumpled suit. I told him everything. He listened without interrupting, occasionally jotting notes on a yellow legal pad. "What are your goals here?" he asked when I finished.
Prosecution? Restitution? Both? I want my money back, all of it. He leaned back in his chair. Civil suit for conversion and fraud. We could pursue that, but Sage, lawsuits are expensive. My retainer alone would be $5,000, and that's just to get started. Court costs, filing fees, discovery, it adds up quickly. $5,000 I didn't have. What if I can't afford a lawyer? Small claims court is an option for amounts under $12,000 in Pennsylvania. You could represent yourself, no lawyer required, but your loss exceeds that significantly. So I need money to get my money back. The irony was bitter. There might be another angle, Henderson said, tapping his pen against the pad. If you can demonstrate criminal fraud, which it sounds like you can with the forged documents, you could potentially file a victim impact statement and request restitution through the criminal courts. If your sister is convicted, the judge could order her to pay you back as part of her sentence. Officer Reeves made it sound like criminal prosecution was unlikely. In my experience, district attorneys are more willing to prosecute financial crimes when there's clear evidence and a cooperative victim. The forged paperwork is strong evidence. Your father's testimony that he was deceived would be crucial. Would he have to testify against his own daughter? His expression was sympathetic. Yes, and that's where these cases fall apart. Families don't want to put their loved ones in prison. I thought about my father's face when he told Vanessa to leave. The devastation. The betrayal. I'll talk to him.
That evening, I sat down with both my parents at the kitchen table. Mom had made coffee, her solution to every crisis, but none of us were drinking it. I went to the police today, I said, and to a lawyer. Dad's jaw tightened. And? The police took a report, but they said prosecution is uncertain. The lawyer said if there is a criminal case, you'd have to testify, Dad, about Vanessa tricking you into signing those documents. My father was quiet for a long moment. She's my daughter. I'm your daughter too, I said softly, and she stole my future. Robert, Mom reached across the table, taking his hand. What Vanessa did was wrong, illegal. If we don't hold her accountable, what message does that send? To her? To Riley? To Sage? It sends the message that family loyalty means enabling criminal behavior, that it's okay to hurt the people who love you as long as you're related to them. Dad looked old, tired. If she goes to prison, what happens to Riley? And there was the guilt trip Vanessa had counted on. Riley, the innocent child who'd become her mother's human shield. Riley could stay with us, Mom said quietly. If it comes to that, we'd figure it out. Vanessa sent me a text last night. I pulled out my phone. You'll regret this. She's not sorry, Dad. She's angry that she got caught. That's not someone who deserves protection. My father covered his face with his hands. When he looked up, his eyes were red. Okay, I'll testify if it comes to that. But first, we try to resolve this without the courts. We give her one chance to make this right. She had her chance, I protested. She chose to spend the money instead of returning it. One more chance, Dad insisted. We sit down with her, we lay out the legal consequences, and we give her the opportunity to arrange a payment plan or take out loans to repay you. If she refuses, then we pursue every legal option available. It felt like weakness to me, like giving her another opportunity to manipulate us. But I saw the pain in my father's eyes and knew he needed this. One final attempt to believe his daughter could do the right thing. Fine, one chance. But if she refuses, we don't hold back. Mom called Vanessa that night. I could hear her sister's voice through the phone, sharp and defensive. Mom's request for a family meeting was met with suspicion, accusations, and eventually reluctant agreement. Saturday morning, neutral location, the public library's conference room, so we wouldn't be tempted to start screaming at each other in private. The next 3 days crawled by. I called Riverside and begged for another extension.
Miss Caldwell, bless her, gave me until the Monday after our Saturday meeting. But that's absolutely final, Miss Brown. After that, your spot goes to the next person on the list. I worked my shifts at the diner, going through the motions. My regular customers asked about my college excitement, and I plastered on fake smiles and gave vague answers. How do you explain that your own sister dismantled your life? My coworker, Marcus, different Marcus than Vanessa's ex, this one was a 25-year-old philosophy major who'd never left Clearwater, noticed I was off. During a slow afternoon shift, he cornered me by the coffee station. "You okay, Sage? You've been somewhere else all week." I almost brushed him off, but something about his genuine concern broke through my defenses. I gave him the abbreviated version. His expression darkened. "That's so messed up. What are you going to do?" "Try to get her to pay it back. If that doesn't work, legal action." "Good. Make her face consequences." He poured himself a coffee. "You know what your problem is? You're too nice. You're actually considering giving her another chance to fix this when she should be in handcuffs. She's my sister." "She was your sister. The moment she stole from you, she gave up that title." He stirred sugar into his coffee. "Family isn't just blood, Sage. It's people who show up for you, who have your back, who don't sabotage your dreams for furniture money." His words echoed in my head for the rest of my shift. He was right. Somewhere in my heart, I was still clinging to the idea of the sister who had taught me to ride a bike, who'd protected me from bullies, who'd been my hero. But that person was gone. Or maybe she never really existed. Maybe I'd just been too young to see the resentment that had been building all along. Friday night, I couldn't sleep again. I lay in bed, scrolling through old photos on my phone. There we were, at Riverside's third birthday party. Vanessa and me, with cake-covered smiles. There we were at the state park this past summer, Riley in between us holding our hands. Every photo felt like evidence of a lie, a performance she'd been giving while planning to destroy me. I deleted them. All of them. Every picture with Vanessa in it. It felt dramatic, petty even, but I needed to stop romanticizing who I thought she was. Saturday morning arrived too quickly, and not quickly enough. I dressed carefully. Nice jeans, a simple blouse, like I was going to a job interview instead of a confrontation. I wanted to look put together, competent, not like the naive little sister she'd taken advantage of. My parents picked me up. We drove to the library in tense silence. Dad's hands were tight on the steering wheel. Mom kept checking her phone like Vanessa might cancel at the last second. But when we arrived at the library at 10 a.m., Vanessa was already there, sitting at a table in the glass-walled conference room. No Riley. She'd left her with a friend, apparently. Smart. This wasn't a conversation for an 8-year-old. Vanessa looked different. Harder, somehow. Her arms were crossed, her expression defensive before we'd even sat down. This was it. The moment that would determine whether I'd be fighting for my future in a courtroom or if somehow, impossibly, my sister would choose to do the right thing. I sat down across from her and looked into eyes that used to feel familiar, but now belonged to a stranger. "Let's talk about how you're going to fix this," I said. Her laugh was cold. "Or what?"
Vanessa's cold laugh hung in the air of the library conference room like a challenge. "Or what?" she repeated, leaning back in her chair with false confidence. I pulled out a folder I'd prepared and slid it across the table. Inside were printouts, the police report number, Pennsylvania fraud statutes, the forged signature documents my dad had retrieved from his files, and a consultation summary from Marcus Henderson outlining potential criminal charges. Or I pursue criminal charges for fraud, forgery, and theft. Or you face felony prosecution that could result in up to 7 years in prison and a permanent criminal record. Or Riley grows up visiting her mother behind bars. I kept my voice level, clinical. "Those are your or what's, Nessa?" Her face went pale as she flipped through the pages. Dad shifted uncomfortably beside me, but he didn't intervene. Mom's hand found his under the table. "You're bluffing," Vanessa said,
but her voice wavered. "You wouldn't actually send me to prison." "Try me." I leaned forward. "You stole $47,000 from me. You destroyed my chance at college. You manipulated Dad, lied to all of us, and when you got caught, you threatened us. Give me one reason why I shouldn't pursue every legal option available." "Because I'm your sister." "You stopped being my sister the moment you decided your comfort was worth more than my future." The words came out harder than I intended, but they were true. "So here's what's going to happen. You're going to sign a legally binding promissory note agreeing to repay every cent you stole, plus interest. You're going to set up a payment plan, and you're going to do it today, right now, or I walk out of here and go straight to the district attorney's office." "I don't have $47,000. Vanessa's voice rose. "I spent it. How am I supposed to—" "You'll get a second job. You'll take out loans. You'll sell the furniture you bought with my money. I don't care how you do it, but you'll figure it out the same way you expected me to figure out paying for college without the fund you stole." "This is insane." Vanessa looked at our parents. "Are you hearing this? She's actually threatening me." "She's giving you an option to avoid criminal prosecution," Dad said quietly. "That's more mercy than you showed her." "Mercy?" Vanessa's voice cracked. "Making me an indentured servant for the next decade is mercy?" "You committed a crime," Mom said, her voice firmer than I'd heard in days. "Sage could have gone straight to the police without giving you any chance to make this right. She could have pressed charges immediately. Instead, she's offering you a way to fix this and keep Riley's mother out of prison. That is mercy, Vanessa." Vanessa's hands were shaking as she looked at the documents again. I could see the calculation happening behind her eyes, weighing her options, looking for an escape route, realizing there wasn't one. "How much per month?" she finally asked. I'd done the math obsessively over the past 3 days. $1,000 a month for 47 months, plus 3% annual interest on the remaining balance. It comes out to approximately $52,000 total by the time you're finished. $1,000? I can't afford. I cut her off. "You afforded it when you were spending my money. Figure it out. Get a second job. Move to a cheaper apartment. Stop eating out. Do what the rest of us do when we have financial obligations." The silence stretched. Vanessa stared at the papers like they might burst into flames. Finally, she looked up at me with something that might have been hate in her eyes. "Fine, I'll sign your stupid agreement." "Mr. Henderson is waiting in the main library," I said, standing. "He has the official promissory note ready. You'll sign it in front of him as a notary, making it legally enforceable. If you miss a single payment, I can pursue legal action for the full remaining amount plus penalties." Vanessa's jaw clenched, but she stood. We walked through the library together, a silent parade of family dysfunction. A few locals glanced our way. Clearwater was small enough that people recognized us, but they quickly looked away when they saw our expressions. Marcus Henderson was indeed waiting at a study table, his briefcase open beside him. He'd waived his normal fee when I explained I had no money. Something about believing young people deserved advocacy. The promissory note was already prepared, crisp and official-looking. Vanessa read through it slowly, and I watched her face cycle through emotions: anger, resentment, resignation. When she reached for the pen, her hand hesitated. "This will ruin me," she whispered. "You ruined yourself," I replied. She signed it. Henderson notarized it. It was done. As Vanessa walked out of the library without another word, I felt something shift inside me. Not relief, exactly. The money wasn't back. My problems weren't solved. But for the first time since that horrible day at the bank, I felt like I had some control, some agency. I wasn't just a victim anymore.
What now? Mom asked as we watched Vanessa's car pull out of the parking lot. Now I figure out how to actually get to college. That afternoon, I made a series of phone calls. First to Riverside's financial aid office, where I explained my situation to Miss Caldwell with more honesty than I intended. To my shock, she didn't immediately dismiss me. She said, "We have emergency fund resources for students experiencing unexpected hardships. It's not $47,000, but we might be able to offer some assistance. Can you come in Monday morning? Bring documentation of what happened, police reports, the promissory note, anything official. I must pay by Monday afternoon or I lose my spot at Riverside." "I know. Come in at 8 a.m. sharp. I'll see what I can do." Hope, dangerous, fragile hope, flickered in my chest. Next, I called every scholarship program I'd applied to earlier and been rejected from. Most led to voicemails, but I left detailed messages explaining my situation. One program coordinator, a woman named Dr. Sarah Mitchell from the Clearwater Community Foundation, actually called me back within an hour. "Sage, I remember your application. We only had funding for 2 students this year, and you were our 3rd choice. But I'm looking at our budget, and we just had someone decline their award. It's $15,000 for your first year, renewable annually if you maintain a 3.5 GPA. "Are you serious?" I almost dropped my phone. "Yes, I am. I'll need you to come by the foundation office Monday afternoon to sign paperwork. Can you do that?" "Yes, absolutely yes. Thank you so much." Thank the student who declined. And Sage, I'm sorry about what happened with your family. That takes courage to keep fighting. $15,000 combined with whatever emergency aid Riverside might offer, plus federal student loans I could still apply for. I pulled up my calculator app and started running numbers. It would be tight. I'd need to work part-time throughout school, maybe full-time during summers. I'd graduate with debt. But it was possible. Barely, narrowly possible. Sunday, I barely left my room. I was assembling documents, preparing my case, rehearsing what I'd say to Miss Caldwell. My parents checked on me periodically, bringing food I barely touched.
Around 7 p.m., my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. My stomach dropped. Was it Vanessa already backing out? But the message read, "Hey, this is Aisha, your future roommate. You haven't responded to my messages about move-in plans, and I'm getting worried. Everything okay?" Oh God, Aisha, my roommate. I'd completely forgotten about her messages in the chaos of the past week. I pulled up our text thread and saw 3 increasingly concerned messages about coordinating our dorm room setup. I called her instead of texting back. "Sage, finally! I was starting to think you'd changed your mind about Riverside." "No, My voice caught. "There's been a family emergency. Money stuff. I've been trying to figure out if I can still afford to come." "Oh, no. Are you okay?" Something about her genuine concern, this girl I'd only met once at orientation, broke through my carefully maintained composure. I told her everything. The whole story spilled out. Vanessa, the theft, the police report, the promissory note, my desperate scramble to salvage my enrollment. "That's horrible," Aisha said when I finished. "Your own sister? I can't even imagine. What can I do?" "Nothing, I don't think. I have meetings tomorrow that will determine if I can come or not. I just wanted you to know why I've been MIA. Okay, so practical stuff. If you do come, and I really hope you do, you mentioned needing to work part-time. My mom works in the nursing department administration. I could ask her about work-study positions or campus jobs that work with nursing students' schedules." "Really?" "Yeah, of course. We're going to be roommates. Roommates help each other." She paused. "Plus, honestly, you sound like you could use a friend right now." I hadn't realized how much I needed to hear that until she said it. "Thank you, Aisha. Text me after your meetings tomorrow. I'm invested in this now." Monday morning came with the weight of finality. I dressed in my interview outfit again, the same clothes I'd worn to confront Vanessa, now feeling like armor. Dad drove me to Riverside, a 2-hour trip in heavy silence. "Whatever happens today," he said as we pulled into the parking lot, "I'm proud of you. The way you've handled this, the way you've fought back, that takes strength I'm not sure I had at your age." "Thanks, Dad." Miss Caldwell's office was exactly as I'd pictured, cramped, overflowing with files, inspirational posters about education on the walls. She was younger than I'd expected from her voice, maybe mid-30s with kind eyes behind rectangular glasses. I laid everything out: the police report, the promissory note, the timeline of events, bank statements, my acceptance letter, my transcripts, my CV of volunteer work and achievements. I'd even brought a letter from Dr. Mitchell at the Community Foundation confirming the $15,000 scholarship. Miss Caldwell reviewed everything methodically, occasionally making notes. The silence was excruciating. "You've been through something no student should have to face," she said finally, "and you handled it with remarkable maturity and initiative. I'm going to recommend you for our emergency hardship grant. $8,000, non-repayable, combined with your scholarship, maximum federal loans, and the payment plan we can arrange for the remaining balance, you can make this work." The relief was physical, washing over me like a wave. "I can come? I can actually still come?" "You can come. You'll need to work probably 15 to 20 hours a week and budget carefully. But yes, Sage Brown, you can come." I started crying right there in her office. Professional, put-together Sage dissolved into tears while Miss Caldwell passed me tissues and smiled. "Your first tuition payment will be due by the end of this week, which gives you time to finalize your loans. Move-in is still on schedule for next Saturday. You're going to make it, Sage Brown." I called my dad from the parking lot, called my mom, called Aisha, who screamed so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear, called Dr. Mitchell to thank her again. By Monday afternoon, I'd signed scholarship paperwork, completed loan applications, and had a payment plan in place. I was going to college. Not the carefree, fully funded experience I had imagined, but I was going. That evening, my phone buzzed. "Vanessa, I made the first payment, $1,000. You'll see it in your account tomorrow." No apology, no acknowledgement of the pain she had caused, just a transaction notification, as cold and impersonal as everything else about this nightmare. But you know what? I'd take it. Because that $1,000 was proof that my fight had mattered, that standing up to her had consequences, that I wasn't going to be pushed around or discarded. I'd won this round. And more importantly, I'd learned something crucial. I was stronger than I ever known. Strong enough to fight for myself, strong enough to hold people accountable even when they were family, strong enough to build my future from the ashes of someone else's betrayal. The war wasn't over. Vanessa still owed me $46,000 and 3 years of monthly payments stretched out like a gauntlet. But I'd survived the initial battle. And somehow, I was still standing.
Move-in day at Riverside State University should have been one of the happiest days of my life. Instead, I carried boxes up to my third-floor dorm room with a knot of anxiety permanently lodged in my chest. Every item I unpacked was a reminder of how precarious my situation was. One missed loan payment, one failed class, one financial emergency, and this entire house of cards could collapse. Aisha helped me unpack with the kind of cheerful energy that should have been infectious. She decorated her side of the room in vibrant yellows and teals, with string lights and photos of friends and family covering every available surface. My side looked sparse by comparison, practical, minimal, like I was afraid to get too comfortable. "You're allowed to make it feel like home," Aisha said gently, watching me hesitate over whether to hang up the few photos I'd brought. "You earned this, Sage. You fought for it." "I know, it's just..." I sat on my bare mattress. What if she stops paying? What if Vanessa decides the promissory note isn't worth the paper it's printed on? I'm already stretched so thin financially. If I have to take legal action to enforce it, I can't afford a lawyer. "Then we cross that bridge if we come to it." Aisha sat beside me. "But right now, today, you're here. You made it. That's worth celebrating." She was right, of course, but celebration felt premature when I was scheduled to start my campus job at the library in 3 days, when I'd already calculated that I'd need to skip most social events to save money, when every dollar mattered in a way it never had before. Classes started the following week.
Introduction to Nursing, Anatomy and Physiology 1, Chemistry, Psychology, and English Composition. The workload hit like a tsunami. I'd been a good student in high school, but this was different. The pace, the complexity, the expectation that you'd master material independently. My anatomy professor, Dr. Ellen Zhao, had a reputation for being brilliant but demanding. On the first day, she looked out at our lecture hall of 150 students and said, "Statistically, 30% of you won't make it past this semester. Nursing school isn't for the faint of heart." I couldn't be part of that 30%. Failure wasn't an option, not with what I'd sacrificed to be here. I established a routine quickly. Classes from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m., library work study from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. 4 days a week, studying until midnight, repeat. Weekends were for catching up on reading and assignments. I turned down invitations to parties, to dining hall hangouts, to movie nights in other dorm rooms. I couldn't afford the distraction or the social expenses. "You need balance," Aisha warned after the second week, when she found me still awake at 2 a.m., surrounded by anatomy flashcards. "You're going to burn out." I can't afford to burn out. I also can't afford to fail. The first payment from Vanessa hit my account on September 15th, right on schedule. $1,000. I stared at the transaction for a long time, feeling a complex mix of vindication and hollowness. This should have felt like justice. Instead, it just felt like a Band-Aid on a severed limb. But when October 15th came and went with no payment, that hollowness transformed into cold dread. I texted Vanessa. Payment was due 3 days ago. No response. I called. Straight to voicemail. I tried again the next day, and the next. By October 20th, I was leaving increasingly sharp voicemails. "You signed a legally binding contract. If you're in default, I will take legal action." Still nothing. I called my parents. Mom answered, and I could hear the weariness in her voice before she even spoke. "Have you heard from Vanessa?" I asked. "Not in 2 weeks. She's not returning our calls either." Mom sighed. "Riley's birthday is next month, and I don't even know if Vanessa will let us see her." The weaponization of Riley was Vanessa's favorite tactic. Keep the family at arm's length by using her daughter as leverage. It was manipulative and cruel, and it was working. My parents were paralyzed by the fear of losing access to their granddaughter. "I missed my payment," I said flatly. "Oh, Sage, don't make excuses for her. She signed a contract, she agreed to terms, and now she's hiding." "What are you going to do?" "Whatever I have to." I scheduled an appointment at the university's free legal clinic, a service for students dealing with legal issues. The student attorney who met me, a third-year law student named Kenji Tanaka, reviewed my promissory note and the payment history. "This is enforceable," he confirmed. "You can send a formal demand letter first. That's standard protocol. If she doesn't respond within 30 days, you can file in civil court for breach of contract. Given the clear documentation, you'd likely win a judgment. And if I win, then what? She clearly doesn't have money to pay. Then you can pursue wage garnishment, seizure of assets, liens on property, but honestly," Kenny leaned back in his chair, "if she doesn't have income or assets, you can't squeeze blood from a stone. A judgment is only valuable if the person has something to take." "So I'm just stuck?" "Not necessarily. In Pennsylvania, if someone willfully refuses to pay a court-ordered debt, you can pursue contempt of court charges. That can include jail time. Most people find a way to pay when incarceration becomes a real possibility." The idea of my sister in jail should have bothered me more than it did. Maybe that made me a terrible person, or maybe it just made me someone who was tired of being victimized by someone who shared my DNA. I sent the demand letter certified mail, returned received. The legal clinic helped me draft it. Formal, cold, listing the exact amount owed, the payment schedule, and the consequences of continued default. 30 days to cure the breach or face legal action. Meanwhile, school was eating me alive. I'd gotten a C+ on my first anatomy exam, not failing, but dangerously close for someone who needed to maintain a 3.5 GPA for my scholarship renewal. Dr. Zhao's exams were notoriously difficult, requiring not just memorization, but application and synthesis. I was studying constantly, but working 20 hours a week left me perpetually exhausted.
My chemistry professor pulled me aside after I nearly fell asleep during a lab session. "Ms. Brown, is everything all right? You seem distracted lately." How do you explain to a professor that you're juggling a full course load, a part-time job, a lawsuit against your sister, and the constant anxiety that your entire college career could implode at any moment? "Just adjusting to the workload," I lied. "I'll do better." But I wasn't doing better. I was drowning. Aisha noticed before I did. One evening in late October, she found me crying in our dorm room, surrounded by textbooks I couldn't seem to comprehend despite reading the same page 5 times. "Okay, that's it," she said, closing my anatomy book. "You're taking a break." "I can't. I have an exam Thursday." "And you'll do worse if you have a breakdown before then." She grabbed my jacket. "We're going to the coffee shop off campus. My treat. You're going to drink something that isn't dining hall sludge and talk to me about what's actually going on." At Java Junction, a cozy place near campus filled with students and the smell of espresso, Aisha ordered us both fancy lattes I would never buy for myself. We sat in a corner booth, and for the first time in weeks, I let my guard down completely. I told her everything about Vanessa's missed payment, the demand letter, the constant anxiety that I'd have to drop out mid-semester if she never paid another cent, about feeling isolated and alone because I couldn't afford to socialize like other students, about the crushing pressure of maintaining my grades while working enough hours to survive, about feeling guilty that I was even here when my parents were still struggling financially and my relationship with Vanessa had destroyed their family peace. "You're carrying too much," Aisha said when I finished. "You know that, right? You're trying to be superhuman and you're burning out." "What choice do I have?" "You could talk to your professors about extensions. You could reduce your work hours for one semester and take out slightly more in loans. You could join a study group instead of studying alone. Multiple people in our anatomy class meet Tuesdays and Thursdays, and they're desperate for more people." "I can't afford more loans. I'm already going to be paying them off for decades." "Sage," Aisha's voice was firm. "What's the point of being here if you fail out from stress? You're so afraid of failure that you're guaranteeing it by refusing to ask for help." Her words hit harder than I expected. She was right. I'd been so focused on proving I could handle everything alone that I'd isolated myself completely. "The study group meets tomorrow?" I asked quietly. "7 p.m. in the student center. I'll introduce you." The study group, 5 other nursing students, including Aisha, transformed my academic experience. Suddenly, concepts I'd been struggling with alone became clearer through group discussion. Someone always understood what the rest of us didn't, and we filled in each other's gaps. For the first time since arriving at Riverside, I didn't feel completely alone. My second anatomy exam score, B+. Not perfect, but a significant improvement. Then on November 10th, Vanessa finally responded to my demand letter, not with a payment or an apology, but with a text message. "You want to sue me? Go ahead. I'll countersue for emotional distress. You turned our parents against me, and I've lost access to my family. See you in court, little sister." I showed it to Kenji at the legal clinic. He read it and actually laughed. "She has no case for emotional distress. You can't countersue someone for enforcing a legal contract she signed. This is a scare tactic." Should I be scared? No! You should file your claim. I'll help you with the paperwork. Filing a civil lawsuit against my own sister felt surreal. I filled out forms, paid filing fees I could barely afford, and waited for a court date. The case number, CV 2024-8847, became burned into my memory. Meanwhile, my parents were caught in an impossible position. Dad called me one evening, sounding older than I'd ever heard him. "Vanessa reached out," he said. "She wants to have Thanksgiving dinner with us. Says she misses family, that Riley misses her grandparents." "Did she mention the lawsuit?" "She said you're being unreasonable, that you're destroying the family over money." "I'm destroying the family?" My voice rose.
Dad, she stole from me. She forged documents. She's now refusing to honor the contract she signed. How is any of this my fault? It's not. I know it's not, he sighed. But she's still my daughter, Sage. And Riley, I miss that little girl. So have Thanksgiving with them. I'm not stopping you. Will you come? Can we try to have one normal family holiday? The idea of sitting across a dinner table from Vanessa, pretending everything was fine while she owed me thousands of dollars and was dodging a lawsuit, made me feel physically ill. I can't, Dad. I just can't. She's your sister. She stopped being my sister when she decided I was a means to an end. The words felt final, like closing a door. You can have whatever relationship with her you want, but I'm done pretending this is fixable with turkey and stuffing. After I hung up, I cried for the family dinners we'd never have again, for the sister I'd lost, or maybe had never really had, for the version of my life where I didn't have to choose between justice and family peace. But I'd made my choice, and despite everything, despite the exhaustion and the stress and the loneliness, I knew it was the right one. The court date was set for January 15th. 10 weeks away. 10 weeks of studying, working, surviving, and waiting for the moment when I'd finally face Vanessa across a courtroom and let a judge decide who was right. I just had to make it until then.
Finals week hit in mid-December like a freight train, and I was already running on fumes. Between studying for 5 cumulative exams, working my library shifts to afford textbooks for spring semester, and preparing for the January court date with Kenji, I was averaging 4 hours of sleep a night. My body was staging a rebellion, constant headaches, a cold I couldn't shake, hands trembling from too much coffee and too little food. On December 18th, 3 days before my anatomy final, everything fell apart. I was shelving books during my library shift when my phone buzzed with an email notification. The subject line made my blood run cold. Scholarship renewal status. Action required. I ducked into the staff break room and opened it with shaking hands. Dear Miss Brown, our records indicate your current cumulative GPA is 3.41, which falls below the 3.5 minimum required for Clearwater Community Foundation Scholarship renewal. You have until January 10th to raise your GPA to the required threshold, or your scholarship funding for the spring semester will be revoked. Sincerely, Dr. Sarah Mitchell. 3.41. I was 0.09 points away from losing $15,000 in scholarship money. The B+ in anatomy, the B in chemistry, the stress-induced slip in my other classes. It had all added up to falling just short of the one thing I absolutely could not afford to lose. I did the math immediately, frantically. To get my cumulative GPA up to 3.5, I'd need to ace my remaining finals, not just pass them, but get perfect scores. And even then, it would depend on how those grades were weighted. The panic attack hit before I could stop it. My chest constricted, my vision tunneled, and suddenly I couldn't breathe. I was gasping in the library break room, alone, my future crumbling around me, while holiday music played cheerfully over the building speakers. Aisha found me 20 minutes later when I didn't return to my shift. She took one look at my face and immediately knew something catastrophic had happened. "What is it?" she asked, kneeling in front of me. I showed her the email, watched her face fall as she read it. "Okay," she said, her voice determinedly calm. "Okay, this is fixable. You have 5 finals left. If you ace them—" "I can't ace them, Aisha. I'm barely functioning. I haven't slept more than 4 hours in a week. I can barely keep my eyes open during lectures." My voice cracked. "I'm going to lose my scholarship, and if I lose my scholarship, I can't afford to stay. Everything I fought for, everything I sacrificed, it's all going to be for nothing." "Stop. Listen to me." Aisha gripped my shoulders. "You are not going to spiral right now. We're going to make a plan. The study group is meeting tonight. We'll all help you prepare. You're not alone in this." But I felt utterly, completely alone. Alone in a way that had nothing to do with how many people surrounded me, and everything to do with the weight I was carrying that no one else could share. That night, instead of joining the study group, I walked to the campus chapel, a quiet, non-denominational space that was always open. I wasn't particularly religious, but I needed somewhere that felt separate from the pressure cooker my life had become. I sat in a pew in the empty chapel and let myself break down completely. All the tears I'd been holding back for months, the betrayal, the fear, the exhaustion, the overwhelming sense that I was fighting a battle I couldn't win, poured out in ugly, gasping sobs. My phone rang. Dad. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Sage, honey, I need to tell you something. Vanessa called. She said she's not going to show up for the court date in January. What do you mean she's not showing up? She said the whole thing is ridiculous, that no judge is going to side with you over her, and that she's not wasting her time. She's going to ignore the summons. A default judgment. If Vanessa didn't show up, I'd automatically win, but winning a judgment meant nothing if she still refused to pay, and I'd still be out the court costs and filing fees I'd scraped together. There's something else, Dad continued. She's leaving Pennsylvania, moving to North Carolina with some guy she's been seeing. She's taking Riley and leaving in 2 weeks. The room spun. She can't just leave the state when she owes me money and has a court case. She can, and she is. There's no custody agreement with Riley's father to stop her, and until there's an actual judgment against her, she's free to move wherever she wants. Dad's voice broke. I'm going to lose my granddaughter, Sage. Vanessa won't tell us where in North Carolina, won't give us a forwarding address. She said this is our fault for taking your side. The manipulation was breathtaking. Vanessa was burning down every bridge, salting the earth behind her, and blaming everyone else for the destruction she had caused. I'm sorry, Dad. And I was, despite everything. I know how much you love Riley. This isn't your fault. I need you to know that. What Vanessa is doing, all of it, it's on her, not you. But Sage, honey, is it worth it? Pursuing this lawsuit, losing your sister permanently, having your niece grow up not knowing our family? Is the money worth all of this? The question hung in the chapel's silence. Was it worth it? I thought about the last 4 months. The stress, the isolation, the constant financial anxiety, the broken family relationships, the upcoming court battle, the scholarship I was about to lose. All of it could have been avoided if I just let it go, accepted the theft, absorbed the loss, maintained family peace at the expense of justice. Yes, I said finally. It's worth it, because this isn't just about money, Dad. It's about the principle that you can't betray people and face no consequences just because you share DNA. It's about refusing to be a doormat. It's about teaching Riley, even if I never see her again, that actions have consequences and that family isn't an excuse for abuse. Even if it costs you everything? I looked around the empty chapel, thought about my 3.41 GPA and my impossible final schedule and my empty bank account. I don't know if I have anything left to lose. After we hung up, I sat in the silence for a long time. Then I opened my email and started drafting messages to my professors. Dear Professor Zhao, I'm writing to explain my situation this semester and to ask if there are any options for extra credit or additional assignments that could improve my final grade. I wrote similar emails to all 5 of my professors, laid out everything, the theft, the lawsuit, the financial strain, the scholarship requirement. I didn't ask for pity or special treatment, just for any legitimate opportunities to improve my standing that I might have missed. Only 2 responded that night. Dr. Zhao's email was brief. Come to my office hours tomorrow at 2 p.m. The next morning, December 19th, I walked into Dr. Zhao's office expecting, sympathy? Rejection? Instead, she gestured to a chair and said, "Tell me everything." So I did. The whole story, start to finish. She listened without interrupting, her expression unreadable.
Your current grade in my class is a B+. The final exam is worth 30% of your grade. If you score a 96 or higher, you'll end with an A-. That would bring your cumulative GPA up to approximately 3.48, which still short of your requirement. My heart sunk. So, there's nothing I can do. I didn't say that. Dr. Zhao leaned forward. I don't typically offer this, but given your circumstances, I'm willing to let you complete an optional comprehensive project worth an additional 5%. It would require synthesizing everything you've learned this semester into a detailed case study. It's due the day before final grades are submitted, which gives you 3 weeks, including winter break.
If I do the project and ace the final, you'd end my class with a solid A. Combined with strong performances on your other finals, you'd likely hit the 3.5 threshold. She paused. But Sage, I need to be clear. This is not a pity pass. The project will be rigorous, graduate-level work. If you submit something subpar, it will hurt rather than help your grade. I'll do it. Thank you, Dr. Zhao. Seriously, thank you. Don't thank me yet. You haven't seen the assignment. She handed me a packet. The project guidelines were indeed brutal. A 30-page case study requiring integration of anatomy, physiology, pathology, and treatment protocols for a complex medical condition. It would take every spare moment of my winter break. But it was hope. Fragile, demanding, exhausting hope. I spent the next 3 days in a blur of finals preparation. The study group rallied around me with an intensity that was both humbling and overwhelming. Aisha made sure I ate. Another group member, Marcus, a different Marcus than the one from the diner back home, shared his meticulous notes from every lecture I'd dozed through. A girl named Jennifer quizzed me relentlessly on anatomy terms until I could recite them in my sleep. Chemistry final. I walked out fairly confident. Maybe an A-, possibly a B+. Psychology final. Definitely an A. The one bright spot. English composition final. B+ territory, but acceptable. Biology final. Probably an A-. And then, on December 21st, the anatomy final. 3 hours, comprehensive, covering every system we'd studied. I'd prepared as well as humanly possible, but sitting in that lecture hall with my pencil hovering over the first question, I felt the weight of everything writing on this single exam. The scholarship, my ability to return for spring semester, my entire college career. 4 months of hell, all culminating in this moment. I took a breath and started writing. 3 hours later, I walked out of that exam hall with no idea if I'd done enough. I couldn't tell if I'd aced it or barely scraped by. The questions had been fair, but challenging, and some I'd second-guessed myself on multiple times. Now came the worst part. Waiting. Grades wouldn't be posted until December 28th. A full week of limbo, of not knowing if I'd be returning to Riverside in January or packing up my dorm room and heading home in defeat. I went home to Clearwater for Christmas break, a silent, tense affair. Mom had decorated the house, like always, but the joy felt performative. Dad spent most of his time at the hardware store, avoiding the house and its reminders of our fractured family. On Christmas morning, Riley's stocking hung on the mantel. Empty, a ghost of holidays past. Vanessa had indeed moved to North Carolina. No forwarding address, no phone number, no way to contact her. She'd blocked all of us on social media. She'd simply vanished, taking Riley with her, leaving nothing but debt and destruction in her wake. The court date is still scheduled for January 15th, I told my parents over Christmas dinner. Kenji says even if she doesn't show up, I'll get a default judgment, but collecting on it when she's out of state will be nearly impossible. So you went through all of this for nothing? Mom said quietly. Not for nothing, I replied. For the principle of it, for the official record that she did something wrong, for the small chance that someday, somehow, it'll catch up to her. But sitting there in our quiet house, with Riley's toys still in the corner from her last visit, and Vanessa's absence like a wound that wouldn't heal, I wondered if I'd been lying to myself all along. If pride and principle were just expensive words for stubbornness, if I'd sacrificed my family on the altar of being right. On December 27th, I couldn't take the waiting anymore. I drove back to Riverside a day early, even though the dorms wouldn't officially reopen until the 30th. I parked near campus and walked around the empty grounds, thinking about everything that had led me here. My phone buzzed at 11:47 p.m. Email notification. Grade posted. Nursing 101, Introduction to Nursing. My hands shook as I logged into the student portal. One by one, my final grades populated on the screen. Chemistry, A-. Psychology, A. English composition, B+ territory. Biology, A-. And then Anatomy and Physiology 1. The page loaded slowly, painfully, and then there it was. Grade, A. Final exam score, 97. I stared at the screen, barely breathing. Then I clicked over to my cumulative GPA. 3.52. I'd made it. Barely, by the narrowest of margins, by the skin of my teeth, but I'd made it. I called Aisha sobbing. I did it. I actually did it. I knew you would, she said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. You're tougher than you think, Sage Brown. But as I sat alone in my car in the empty campus parking lot, staring at that 3.52, I didn't feel tough. I felt hollow. Victorious, but devastated. I'd won the battle, kept my scholarship, passed my classes, held Vanessa accountable through the legal system. But I'd lost my sister, lost access to my niece, watched my parents' hearts break, spent 4 months in a pressure cooker of stress that had nearly destroyed me. The question that haunted me as I finally drove back to my temporary hotel room wasn't whether it was worth it. It was whether I'd ever stop paying the price for choosing justice over family peace. And whether, in the end, they were ever really even compatible at all.
Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.